Lesotho's passport credibility has fallen short as many countries began to red flag it. The Home Affairs Minister Motlalentoa Letsosa says human trafficking incidents have sharply increased to worrying proportions, and shady people are using Lesotho as a safe passage to sneak into South Africa and other neighboring countries.
We want to make sure that we are convinced that somebody who comes to Lesotho and is given a certain status and they don't comply, we part ways. As simple as that.
Letsosa says that vulnerable individuals, mostly young women, become targets of these scammers.
That's somebody who said they were inviting a foreign man, it was a lady, who said she was staying at Hubetswana, Masewis. There's nothing like that in Lesotho. The letter which was forged was the genuine letter, which had invited somebody else. But they will just change the names here. One letter can bring in 100 people, 200 people, one letter. They just change the names of the invitees. So we realized that and said this is a problem.
This network of scammers is sophisticated and run deep and wide.
As my officers were interviewing this person at the Shetwana airport, somebody called from Pretoria. Asking for the release of this guy because he was invited by him. He was going to go through Fixbank. He was going to Pretoria. He didn't get off the plane at OR. The boss was in Pretoria, but he said, you go to Lesotho, you'll come through the land border.
Letsosa says they are forced to hold issuance of indefinite permits, visas from selected countries, members seeking permit to join relatives, or any form of citizenship. This to ensure that the image of the country and the credibility of its official documents remain beyond reproach. Rapelang Radebe, SABC News, Lesotho.
Well, that report's by our correspondent, Rapelang Radebe. He joins us now to give us a little bit more on that story. He's our correspondent in Lesotho. Rapelang, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Always good to have you.
Peter, thank you very much.
All right, so human trafficking, let's start there because that is quite a scary thing if that's what's happening.
Indeed, absolutely. It is so scary. It actually jeopardizes one of the biggest projects that the Americans were actually willing to help or sustain. The project, the Millennium Challenge account, had been stalled for quite many times simply because they were asking Lesotho to really sort out its affairs when it comes to human trafficking. You would find that people use Lesotho as a passage to do human trafficking. Now, the scary thought was that there's also an opportunity that it can be an open process for issues of terrorism and many other issues.
Lesotho is a landlocked country. How is it that it's being used as a route for trafficking? What typically has been happening?
Absolutely, you are right. I think if you follow that, what was on the package earlier on, Lesotho's passport has been quite credible, opening roads to many countries, knowing that if you hold a Lesotho passport, it is recognizable, it allows you many opportunities. So many people used it to fly from other ends of the world, just go transit to Lesotho because getting into South Africa directly would be a lot difficult. So many people would just fly straight in Lesotho, knowing that as soon as they get into Lesotho, to get into South Africa is relatively easier. Many countries, you'll understand, countries like Pakistan do not require visa to come to Lesotho, but you can get a visa right at the entrance, at the port of entry. So the opportunities like that has been abused for people who wanted to pursue other matters. If you listen to the package, somebody relatively high up was saying in South Africa that, no, if you want to come to South Africa, it's best don't get off OR Tambo, go to Moshoshowani International in Lesotho. From there, use the land border to come into South Africa because some of the borders are relatively even porous. But they know that if you are using land border post, it had been relatively easy because of the relationships between Lesotho and South Africa. That is why the minister says he needs to tighten. I think I should just mention one of the decisions that were the former Minister Nkosazana Zuma was accused of was cancelling what was called a 6 months permit That was just around 2010. Because there were potential opening of opportunities that people could abuse that particular, because you could just flag that particular permit and walk straight into South Africa because of the good relationships. But it was opening up so many opportunities for abuse.
So what is the problem with the passport that it's being abused in this way? Is it not got enough security features?
Indeed, but I must commend and applaud, because Lesotho has gone through quite intensive measures to make sure that the passport is no longer an analog passport. The passport, it is equivalent with standards exactly the same as the South African, which is why many people who thought they could abuse it by just photoshopping or removing the picture on it, because it is now electronic, almost all the passport-related systems in the world can pick up for what it is original. So if it has been tampered with, or some has been acquired illegally, it can be traced very well. And South Africa now even shares information knowing exactly who's got the passport, because people could have multiple passports previously, because a passport was not used as an identity document, but used as a travel document and as a means to identify yourself. So you'll find that many Basotho had up to 5 passports. If they are blacklisted in a particular area, they simply go and claim it lost, take another one. So that is when the credibility of that passport really became questionable. But I must applaud once again, they went through tough measures to make sure that you have one identity document which shows exactly who you are, and your passport will be always linked to that particular identity document. So much has been done. Still, some people have not converted into the proper passport, but they have actually put a deadline saying, if you do not convert, or you are owning multiple passports and we don't know of it, you might actually be erased from the systems. They are saying they're going to actually hold a whole lot of permits that they give. Like if you want to join a relative in Lesotho, or what they call indefinite permit. Sometimes you want to go to Lesotho to explore other means, so you are given that indefinite permit. But it was realized that people actually even married people who were not aware that they were married, or it was a marriage of convenience, simply because they want to acquire the passport, knowing that if you come from Lesotho, you can be accepted in Canada. It's easier for you to be accepted in the United States, other than many other African countries, which would be highly questionable.
Do they have any statistics in terms of which countries, which people have been abusing the system the most?
They did, but I think for the sake of diplomacy and others, they said they really wouldn't want to name shame. But I think one culprit that came up often was Pakistan. And if you look at the numbers of people returned just in this month alone at the Moshoshone International Airport, Pakistan came out quite frequently. Other African countries, but they were saying the troublesome one seemed to be Pakistan, simply because it's one of the Commonwealth countries.
Right.
It was easier for them to go straight into Lesotho, and then from there they move straight to South Africa. Some of them don't even know the language, can speak English, can speak Sesotho, and they go like, who are you visiting exactly? They will just tell you, no, I've got somebody in Pretoria. At that time, that person doesn't even know where Pretoria looks like.
All right, so sadly, our borders are notorious for corruption. Is that something that you've been experiencing in Lesotho as well, where Home Affairs officials are taking money, stamping passports, letting people through for pay?
Indeed, but I think one must also blame the system for turning, your ordinary law-abiding citizens into criminals, simply because of some other ridiculous, really what I would consider unnecessary. We know for a fact that a lot of Basotho women work as household keepers in South Africa. They are mine workers. I think that there's supposed to be a system to expedite that those people really are not, locked up for buying a loaf of bread across the river. They sometimes even don't consider themselves of having offended anything. But of course, there has to be a system to safeguard the borders, because now if you look at terrorism acts, a lot of them simply say, I'm married to Lesotho, therefore they feel like they deserve citizenship of Lesotho, when actually they are looking at the bigger picture to exploit the systems for reasons only known to them. And of course, like you're saying, the officials at the border sometimes get a little greedy and want to exploit people. Take, for example, it costs you 850 to do a COVID test. For somebody who uses the border sometimes up to 20 times to go in and out, there is going to be an opportunity for somebody to exploit the system. Yes, there are other means that you can pay the rapid test, but really, you are now beginning to go into that space where innocent people who are just trying to make a living are now forced to look for other alternative measures, not so legal.
Thank you so much indeed, and we'll catch up with you again soon. But sounds like the authorities are on top of the situation finally. Thank you, Rapelang.
Okay.